Hey, they got an offensive lineman from the portal, and this kind of dovetails. The one thing they need is a defensive tackle, and so far in the aftermarket spring portal, they've gotten, as we said, Bo Atkinson, the defensive end, and this offensive lineman, 6'5" or 6'6", 330 pounds, Justin Terry, originally from Pickerington. And so they knew all about him. They knew who he was. And he went to West Virginia for 1 year. West Virginia had the coaching change, obviously, going from Neil Brown to Rich Rod. And Terry was in the transfer portal. And Ohio State snaps him up. They didn't want him last year, coming out of Pickerington. But now a year later, they want him after he essentially, I assume, redshirted at West Virginia. So that's kind of an interesting pickup. But yesterday, Ryan Day talked about how they are definitely still looking at defensive tackles, but will not take one just to take one. That it's got to be somebody who's as good or better than what they already have in the fold. I mean, you've got Caden McDonald, Nedrick Houston are the starters, and then it really drops off. You've got some people behind them, Tywan Malone and some young guys, but they haven't seen what they like yet out of that defensive tackle spot.
And really, unless a graduate transfer jumps in there, I don't think they're going to find anything that is better. I guess the good thing is now that if you bring somebody in who is of equal talent, you're not going to scare anybody into the portal. Like, I think one of the concerns initially was if you bring somebody in that is the same as what you've got, you might lose 2 guys to the portal that are like, well, you're trying to get my spot up. I'm out of here. So I guess that fear is gone, but adding another guy that you don't know can play is not really the answer there. In terms of one of the things that Ryan Day did talk about as well yesterday was the need to bring in more developmental players. And I asked him about building the roster and how many scholarships they're going to be at. He said right now the plan is 90 scholarships. The 105 is going to go up because the judge in the House case is like, we're not doing 105 just yet. We're going to have to grandfather the players in or slowly get down to 105. So they'll probably be back around 120 this year, but those, that's just going to be 15 more walk-ons. But a guy like Justin Terry, yeah, he wasn't offered out of high school, but I wonder if he would have been, if he's one of these, now when they're looking at the developmental guys, like a Bod Penn Miller, who was a quarterback in high school, but is going to be a receiver at Ohio State, where you have to have some guys that understand that they're going to take a little bit of time to develop and that they have that patience and that commitment. I think that's important with the transfer in the transfer portal era, where you're going to be losing guys. But if you've got guys that are like hunkered down and know it's going to take a little bit of time, then that helps bolster the roster when you lose guys that want something right now.
How often is Ohio State signing the 49th rated player in the state?
Not often for sure. Unless that state is Texas or Florida, but I mean, you can go back and you'll find random, like this person was rated like 28th or 30th in Ohio or whatever. That's another thing Ryan Day said is like, they need to do a better job of evaluating. Like, they need to be more focused on evaluating, because in the past, what do you say? We're kind of almost just collecting because they know they can get certain guys. And so you just fill up with the guys that you can get that are good. But it's also like, well, the reason the Big Ten and some Big Ten schools, like when they have their good years, it's generally because, some Ohio guys develop late, and, Michigan State, when they're at their best, they've got good Ohio guys. Michigan, when they're at their best, they have good Ohio guys. And you can say that for any Big Ten team or Kentucky. And a lot of those guys can play at Ohio State. So you have to evaluate better. I mean, you guys remember, Steve, you remember when Urban would get mad that so mad that Chris Borland was at Wisconsin and he wasn't at Ohio State. Never mind that, Wisconsin was the only program that offered him a scholarship. Like, how do these people get out of Ohio? And it's like, you wouldn't have offered him. That 2012 class was loaded with Ohio guys that Urban Meyer would have never offered. Like, if he would have came in, like a year later, he'd be like, why are we playing against Pat Elflein? It's like, you would have never offered Pat Elflein. So this gives them an opportunity to offer more and take more of those developmental guys and build something with them. And then when they are ready to play, they're kind of veteran and they've been around and they can continue to pass on the culture.
Yeah, Ohio has always been kind of, where you start and you branch out from there, kind of concentric circles out from there to Pittsburgh, to Detroit, to Chicago, Indianapolis, Kentucky, et cetera, to go and find high school talent. And, some people, it kind of comes and goes, will say, oh, Ohio State's abandoned Ohio. But, you look at the starters for, the national championship game, about over half of them were from outside the state of Ohio, I believe. So it was not an Ohio, rich type team. It was probably about 50-50. So, I see both sides of it. I guess if you want to compete at the national level, you need the best of the best. But at the same time, you do need to be rooted in the state of Ohio, and you definitely have to get the best players in the state of Ohio and get them to stay at home. No question about it. I think that is particularly when, they're guys that can help you win, no doubt about it.
Sounds like Urban Meyer had nothing to do with the second-tier player in the state of Ohio unless he went elsewhere and then became a first-tier player, and then suddenly it was a problem.
Hey, that's the fault of the assistant coaches. They're the ones that are supposed to know which guys to target and recruit. So that always falls back on the assistant coach.